You should be on your goddamn knees, grateful I even chose you. Without me, you're nothing. Just another black girl pretending she belongs in a white billionaire's world. She'll never fit into this family. Just look at her skin. A nobody trying to marry into billions." Those were the scornful words of the white billionaire Groom's family, spoken loud enough to cut through her heart like a knife. At their table, she was mocked, dismissed, and treated as less than nothing. A black woman unworthy of the life she was about to enter. But what they never knew was the truth behind her silence. She wasn't just a bride. She was power wrapped in humility, wealth hidden in plain sight. And when the moment came, the deal they thought would secure their empire, a $950 million contract, shattered with one decision from her lips. Sometimes the people you mock are the very ones holding your future in their hands. Sometimes the woman you look down on is the one who can bring an empire to its knees. This is the story of a bride who turned shame into power, and the moment that left a billionaire family speechless. She'll never fit into this family. Just look at her. A black girl trying to marry into billions. The words cut through Emily Carter like a knife. She heard them clear as day, spoken by Victoria Hawthorne, Daniel's mother, at the head of the glittering dinner table. And Victoria didn't whisper. She wanted Emily to hear. Chloe, Daniel's younger sister, leaned in with a smirk. "It's cute, though. Our little diversity project for the press. Too bad it won't last." The guests chuckled politely. Emily's face burned. She lowered her gaze, fingers tightening around her napkin. For a moment her throat closed, but she forced herself to breathe and lift her head again. She could not, would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. What none of them knew was the truth. Emily Carter wasn't a poor girl clawing her way into a white world. She wasn't the charity case the newspapers painted her to be. She was Emily Carter Wyndham, the only daughter of the Wyndham Empire, an heiress to a fortune that could crush the Hawthorns in one stroke. But she kept that secret buried. She wanted to be loved for herself, not her name, not her inheritance. That was why she let them mock her. That was why she endured the sneers and whispers about her race. And most of all, that was why she clung to Daniel. Daniel Hawthorne rose from his chair, glass in hand, commanding the room with his easy smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" The room quieted. A spotlight seemed to follow him wherever he went. He reached for Emily's hand, pulling her to her feet. "Tonight we celebrate love. Real love. Emily and I are proof that love crosses every barrier. Race, status, fortune. She came from a world so different from ours. I came from this." He gestured toward the glittering hall. "And yet here we are together." The crowd erupted in applause. People smiled, clapped, even dabbed at their eyes as if they had witnessed something pure. Emily forced a small smile. On the outside, she looked like the fairy tale bride-to-be. Inside, her heart was trembling. Daniel leaned close, lips brushing her ear, his voice dropped low and sharp. "Keep smiling. Don't make me regret this." Emily froze, but she didn't let her expression falter. She told herself it was pressure, stress. He didn't mean it. He was overwhelmed by his family, the press, the company. That was all. "The man I fell in love with is still in there," she reminded herself. "He'll change. He has to." Dinner continued. Laughter, glasses clinking, forks on porcelain. Emily sat quietly trying to eat, trying not to hear the constant barbs thrown her way. "So, Emily," Chloe said suddenly, her eyes sharp as glass, "what was it like growing up in the ghetto? Must be overwhelming, isn't it, sitting here with us?" Emily set down her fork, her lips parting slightly. Victoria smirked, sipping her wine. "We're all curious. How does a girl like you even end up in Daniel's world?" Daniel chuckled, leaning back in his chair. She was unexpected. A refreshing change, my little project. Laughter again, light and cruel. Emily's face heated, her chest aching. She wanted to tell them all the truth, that she could buy and sell this table 10 times over, that she didn't need their name, their empire, their validation. But she stayed quiet. Because even though the words cut deep, she still believed. Believed that Daniel was the man who once held her hand under the stars, the man who once kissed her forehead and told her she was all he needed. She couldn't let go of that hope. Not yet. The music swelled, and Daniel stood, extending his hand. "Dance with me." Emily rose, slipping her hand into his. He led her to the center of the floor, cameras following their every step. The orchestra played, and Daniel guided her into a graceful waltz. To the crowd, they were magic. Cinderella and her white prince, smiling, twirling, the perfect couple. Daniel bent close, smiling wide for the cameras. "Beautiful," he said aloud. "Perfect." Then softer, meant only for her. "You're my charity, Emily. Don't forget that." Her heart flinched. She nearly stumbled, but she didn't stop smiling. She couldn't, because she still believed, still prayed that somewhere inside this cruel facade was the man she loved. The music faded, and the dance ended to polite applause. Daniel kissed Emily's hand, bowing slightly, every move polished for the cameras. The crowd swooned at the fairy tale display. But when they stepped off the floor and the spotlight drifted away, his grip on her hand loosened like she was nothing more than an accessory. "Not bad," he murmured. "At least you didn't trip." Emily bit the inside of her cheek. Her heart begged her to defend herself, to demand the love and respect she deserved. But her mind whispered a different plea. Give him time. He's under pressure. He'll change. She sat back down at the table, lifting her glass of water with trembling fingers. Around her, the hawthorns laughed and gossiped, barely acknowledging her presence except when they needed a reminder of how different she was. Chloe leaned close again. "You know, Emily, Daniel always did have a taste for charity work. But this one..." She waved her hand dramatically, eyes glinting with mischief. "This one is bold." Emily's chest tightened, but she forced a smile. She couldn't give Chloe the reaction she wanted. Victoria's voice followed, smooth and deliberate. "Daniel is a hawthorn. He needs someone who reflects the family's legacy, our bloodline. Marrying this." Her eyes swept over Emily, sharp as knives. "It's amusing for the press, but impractical." Daniel chuckled. He didn't defend her, not once. Later, as the guests moved toward the bar and the hall grew louder with chatter, Emily slipped away to the balcony. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, the city lights flickering far below. She wrapped her arms around herself, drawing a deep, shaky breath. She wanted to scream, to tear away the mask she had worn for so long and throw the truth into their smug, white faces. "I'm not a charity case. I'm not a project. I am Emily Carter Wyndham." But she didn't. She couldn't. If she spoke, everything would shatter. The illusion, the test she had set for herself. She needed to know if Daniel loved her for her, not for her fortune. That was why she had kept her identity hidden. That was why she had endured humiliation after humiliation. Behind her, footsteps echoed. Daniel stepped onto the balcony, a glass of champagne in hand. He closed the door behind him, shutting out the music and laughter. "You disappeared," he said lightly, though his smile was stiff. "Don't sulk, Emily. It doesn't look good." Emily turned to face him, her heart pounding. "Why didn't you say anything?" Her voice cracked, but she steadied it. "When your mother insulted me, when Chloe mocked me, when you..." She swallowed hard. "When you called me your project." Daniel sipped his champagne, unbothered. It's just talk. Don't take it so seriously. Her chest ached. But it hurt. For the first time, his eyes softened just slightly. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You're too sensitive. You should be proud. You're part of a story the world adores. The white billionaire and the poor black girl, people eat it up. It makes me look good. And it makes you unforgettable. Emily searched his face, desperate for the man she had once loved. Is that what I am to you? A story? His hand dropped. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned back towards the glowing ballroom, his voice cool. Don't ruin this for me, Emily. We've come too far. When the door closed behind him, Emily stood frozen in the night air. Her eyes stung, but no tears fell. He'll change, she told herself, clinging to the words like a lifeline. This isn't him. The man I loved is still in there. He has to be. Her heart still believed in him, still believed in their love. But deep inside, buried under the hope, a small flame of doubt flickered. Because no matter how tightly she held on to the dream, the cracks were already showing. And soon she would learn just how cruel the illusion really was. The headlines called them a dream couple. Hawthorne heir marries for love, not status. Modern Cinderella. Daniel and Emily capture the nation's heart. Magazine covers showed them holding hands, smiling under fairy lights, walking red carpets as if their worlds had always belonged together. Daniel kissed her cheek for the cameras, whispered sweet nothings the microphones could barely catch. To the public eye, they were perfect. But behind the closed doors of their penthouse, perfection cracked. Emily sat at the edge of their massive bed one evening, still in her gown from a charity gala. Her shoes pinched, her makeup itched, but her heart ached more than anything else. Daniel hadn't spoken to her all night, except in front of the cameras. When the elevator doors had closed behind them and the last flash of cameras had faded, his smile had vanished. Now, he loosened his tie, tossing it onto a chair, his jaw tight. Next time, stand straighter, he said flatly. You looked tired on stage. Emily blinked. I was tired. We've been out since morning. He didn't look at her. People don't want tired. They want inspiration. They want the girl who came from the ghetto and still manages to shine. Her lips parted, a protest on her tongue, but she swallowed it back. She stared at her hands folded in her lap. I'll do better, she whispered. Daniel grunted, already scrolling through his phone, the glow of the screen lighting his indifferent face. Emily turned away, her chest tightening. She remembered the early days before the press, before the staged photos, back when he had laughed with her, told her she was different, special. She remembered lying under the stars with him, dreaming of a future. That man is still here, she told herself. He's just lost right now. He'll change. Days blurred into weeks. In public, Daniel paraded her like a trophy. He held her hand at galas, whispered scripted lines during interviews. She keeps me grounded, he told a late-night host, smiling as the audience swooned. She reminds me that love is more important than status. But in private, he barely acknowledged her. At breakfast, he scrolled through business reports while she sat in silence. At night, he often returned late, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers. When she asked where he'd been, his answers were clipped. Meetings. Don't ask? Emily forced herself to believe him. Forced herself to think it was just stress, just business, just pressure. But deep inside, a small whisper began to grow. Something's wrong. One evening, she walked into the sitting room and froze. Daniel was on the phone, his back to her, voice low but warm in a way she hadn't heard in months. "You know I can't stay long. Yes, I miss you too. Soon, I promise." Her breath caught. He turned suddenly, spotting her in the doorway. His eyes flickered and he ended the call with a sharp, "I'll call later." "Who was that?" Emily asked softly. "No one," Daniel said too quickly. "Business." But the look in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched. She knew. She didn't want to believe it, but she knew. "Daniel," her voice broke, "please tell me it's not her." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Emily lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, her chest hollow. Isabella. The name tasted bitter in her mouth. Daniel's ex, the blonde, blue-eyed woman his family had always wanted for him. Elegant, poised, wealthy, the perfect white match. And he was still seeing her. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them away. She refused to cry. Not yet. "He'll come back," she told herself, clinging desperately to the memory of the man she once loved. "If I'm patient, if I'm loyal, if I believe in us, he'll see it. He'll change." The next morning, Victoria paid Emily a visit. She arrived unannounced, sweeping into the penthouse like she owned it, her perfume filling the air. Emily greeted her politely, offering coffee. Victoria waved it away, her eyes sharp as glass. "Let me be clear, Emily. You're here for show. That's it. You're part of the fairy tale Daniel sells to the world. Don't mistake that for love." Emily's chest tightened. "I know Daniel. He loves me." Victoria chuckled, shaking her head. "Oh, darling, you really believe that? My son doesn't need love. He needs a legacy, a white legacy. You're a convenient prop, but props are always replaced." She adjusted her gloves, her tone almost sweet. "Don't embarrass yourself by expecting more." With that, she swept out, leaving Emily trembling in the silence of the room. Emily sat down slowly, pressing her hands against her knees to stop them from shaking. Her pride screamed at her to walk away, to reveal who she really was, to destroy every cruel word they had thrown at her. But her heart, her foolish, loyal heart, kept whispering, "Stay. Hold on. He'll change. The man I loved is still there. He has to be." Her silence became her prison, but it was also her shield. For now. One night after a long gala, Emily walked into the living room to find him pouring himself a drink. She sat carefully on the edge of the sofa. "Daniel, can we talk?" He didn't look at her. "About what?" "About us." Her voice trembled. "You've been so distant. We hardly talk unless we're in front of people. I need to know if we're okay." Daniel let out a short, harsh laugh, shaking his head. "We're fine. Stop overthinking. You're here. I'm here. The cameras love us. That's all that matters." Her stomach twisted. "That's not what matters to me. I love you, Daniel. I just want—" He cut her off, setting his glass down with a sharp clink. "Don't start this tonight. You know how much pressure I'm under. I don't have time for your feelings." Emily swallowed hard, her eyes burning. "I just want the man I fell in love with back." Daniel's gaze flickered, soft for only a second before it hardened again. "Grow up, Emily. This isn't about love. It's about image, and right now you're doing your part. Don't ruin it." His words hit like a slap. She looked down at her lap, holding herself together by sheer force. When she finally looked up, Daniel had already left the room. The whispers about Isabella grew louder. Emily tried to ignore them, tried to pretend they weren't true, but the signs were everywhere. Late nights, secret phone calls, the scent of expensive perfume clinging to his jacket. One afternoon, Emily was walking down the hallway of a hotel during a conference Daniel was supposed to attend. She froze when she saw him at the far end, leaning close to a woman in a glittering dress. Isabella. Their heads tilted together, their laughter low and intimate. Emily's chest squeezed so tight she could hardly breathe. She wanted to turn and walk away, pretend she hadn't seen it. But her feet carried her forward, step by trembling step. Daniel. His body stiffened. He turned slowly, his smile fading. Isabella glanced at Emily, then smirked knowingly, as if she had already won. "Emily," Daniel said calmly. Too calmly. "What are you doing here?" Her voice cracked. "What are you doing here, with her?" Silence hung heavy between them. Isabella's smirk deepened. Emily's throat burned. "Tell me the truth, Daniel. Are you still with her?" Daniel's jaw clenched. His silence was answer enough. Emily's knees felt weak. "After everything, after all I've given you, how could you?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Don't be dramatic. You knew what this was. You're here because you make me look good. You're the diversity quota. Isabella, she's different. She understands my world. She belongs in it." Emily's chest shattered. "And I don't." He looked her straight in the eye, cold and unflinching. "You were never more than a story, Emily. A progressive fairy tale for the press. That's all." The words knocked the air out of her lungs. She stood there frozen, unable to breathe, unable to think, watching the man she loved dismiss her as if she were nothing. That night, Emily sat alone in the dark of their penthouse, staring at the city lights outside. She replayed his words over and over, a story, a project, a diversity quota. Her pride screamed at her to leave, her heart begged her to stay. "Maybe he'll change," she whispered to herself, clutching a pillow in her arms. "Maybe if I just stay, if I keep loving him, he'll remember. The man I knew is still there. He has to be." But the silence in the room answered her louder than any words. Days later, Victoria visited again, finding Emily sitting quietly by the window. "You poor thing," Victoria said with mock sympathy. "Still holding on to a dream? Haven't you realized yet? My son doesn't love you. He never did." Emily clenched her hands together, her voice trembling. "I love him. I can't just walk away." Victoria leaned down, her tone icy. "Love is for fools, Emily, and my son doesn't need a fool. He needs a partner who matches his legacy, his bloodline. That will never be you." Emily held her gaze, her heart breaking but her pride unbroken. When Victoria left, Emily whispered to herself, "I'll endure for love, for us." Her silence became her shield. Her silence became her prison. The night was quiet, the city glowing outside the penthouse windows. Emily had been waiting for Daniel for hours, dressed in a soft evening gown, a book in her lap she hadn't read a single word of. She glanced at the clock again. Midnight. When she finally heard the elevator chime, relief rushed through her chest. She stood quickly, smoothing her dress, telling herself not to ask questions, not to accuse, not to push. If she was gentle, if she was patient, maybe tonight would be different. But Daniel didn't come in alone. He stepped into the living room with Isabella on his arm, her laugh ringing like bells in the silence. Isabella's dress shimmered in the low light, her hand resting easily on Daniel's chest. Emily froze. The book slid from her hands and hit the floor. "Daniel." Her voice was small, broken. "What is this?" Daniel stiffened. For a moment, guilt flickered across his face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by irritation. "Emily," he said sharply, "you weren't supposed to be awake." Emily's throat tightened. "You brought her here, to our home." Isabella smirked, brushing her blonde hair over one shoulder. "Oh, don't act so shocked, darling. You didn't really think you were the only one, did you?" Tears stung Emily's eyes, but she held her ground. Daniel, please just tell me this isn't what it looks like. Tell me I still matter to you." Daniel sighed, pulling his arm away from Isabella and stepping toward her. His voice was low, but each word was sharp as a blade. "Did you really think I'd choose you? You were never love, Emily. You were my project, my image makeover, my goddamn charity case." Emily's breath caught like she had been struck. The words tore through her chest, shattering what little hope she had clung to. Isabella's smile widened. Daniel didn't even look at her as he continued. "You were useful. The world loved the story of me marrying some poor black girl. It made me look noble, progressive. But that's all you ever were. A useful prop." Emily staggered back, gripping the edge of the sofa to steady herself. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Daniel turned away, already loosening his tie as if the conversation were over. "Don't make this dramatic. You'll keep playing your role until the wedding. And after that, we'll see." Her chest ached so fiercely she thought she might collapse. "After that," she whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The next evening was the rehearsal dinner. Emily wore a pale blue gown, her hair pinned neatly, her smile painted carefully on her face. Every step she took felt heavy. Every laugh she gave felt hollow. She wanted to disappear, but she forced herself to endure. The ballroom was full of guests, business partners, politicians, society elites. Cameras flashed, music played, and Daniel stood proudly at her side, acting once again like the perfect fiancé. Emily clung to her glass of champagne, her mind replaying his words from the night before. "You were never love. You were my charity." She swallowed hard, praying no one could see the storm inside her. Then Chloe appeared, her smile wicked. "Oh, Emily," she said sweetly. "What a lovely dress. Let me help you adjust it." Before Emily could respond, Chloe stumbled forward, her full glass of red wine spilling across the pale blue fabric. Gasps filled the room. Emily froze, staring down at the dark stain spreading across her gown. "Oh dear," Chloe said with mock concern, dabbing at the fabric with a napkin that only made it worse. "How clumsy of me." The crowd chuckled uneasily. Emily looked up at Daniel, her heart begging him to defend her, to show some shred of kindness. But he only smirked, raising his glass. "Careful, Chloe. You'll make people think you did that on purpose." Laughter rippled through the tables. Emily's throat burned. She forced a tight smile, blinking away the tears that threatened to spill. The stain on her gown felt like a brand, proof of how little they respected her, how little she meant to them as a black woman in their world. And Daniel's smirk confirmed the truth she had tried so desperately to deny. The man she loved was gone. For the first time, Emily admitted the truth. The love she clung to had only ever been hers. Emily didn't return to the ballroom right away. She stood in the silent hallway, her hand pressed against her stained gown, trying to calm the storm inside her. Every part of her wanted to run, to tear off the mask she had worn for so long, to scream the truth of who she really was. But she didn't. She straightened her shoulders, fixed her hair in the window's reflection, and whispered to herself, "Hold on. Just hold on." When she finally stepped back into the ballroom, all eyes turned to her. The whispers were sharp, cutting. "Poor thing, she looks pathetic. That dress is ruined. She really doesn't belong here." Daniel glanced at her from across the room, his smirk barely visible behind his glass. He didn't move to help her, didn't speak up for her. He simply let her walk back into the sea of judgment alone. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the apartment was quiet again, Emily sat across from Daniel in their living room. The lights of the city glowed behind him, but his face was shadowed, unreadable. She finally broke the silence. "Why are you doing this to me?" Daniel looked up from his drink. "Doing what?" "Letting them humiliate me, letting your family tear me apart, standing there while Chloe poured wine on me like it was a game." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "I'm supposed to be your partner. Why won't you protect me?" He leaned back, cold and calm. "Because you don't need protecting. You need to remember your fucking role." Emily's stomach sank. "My role?" "You're the story, Emily. The ghetto girl who married a billionaire. People love that shit. It makes me look good. That's all you are. That's all you've ever been." She whispered, "I loved you." Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "That was your mistake." That night, alone in bed, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The ache in her chest felt unbearable, the silence around her pressing in like a weight. She thought of every moment she had defended him to herself, every excuse she had made, every humiliation she had endured because she believed he would change. But now she knew the truth. The man she loved was gone, if he had ever been there at all. The next day, Victoria cornered her in the garden of the Hawthorne estate, her sharp eyes glinting in the sunlight. "You look pale," she said smoothly. "Rehearsal dinner too much for you? Don't worry, Emily. Once the wedding is over, you'll learn your place." Emily met her gaze, her voice soft but steady. "And what place is that?" Victoria smiled thinly. "The background, a convenient, silent accessory. That's all Daniel needs you for." Emily's lips curved, though her eyes were heavy with pain. "Funny," she said quietly, "how fortunes can change overnight." Victoria frowned, caught off guard. That evening, Daniel announced plans for the wedding to a room full of investors and friends, his arm draped casually over Emily's shoulders. To the world, they looked like the golden couple. Their smiles flawless, their bond unshakable. But inside, Emily was no longer the same. The heartbreak was still raw, the wounds still fresh. But she had seen the truth. She could no longer lie to herself. The love she believed in was gone. And in its place, something stronger was taking root. She stayed silent, letting Daniel talk, letting the crowd cheer, letting the cameras flash. But in her silence, her mind whispered a promise. This isn't over. Not yet. The Hawthorns called it a pre-wedding reception, though everyone knew it was more of a showcase. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, filled with politicians, CEOs, and reporters. Daniel had insisted on throwing it days before the actual wedding. "It's about momentum," he told Emily smugly. "The press will eat it up. The love story, the empire, the future, everything I've built, it all comes together here." Emily had only smiled in return, hiding the truth behind calm eyes. She never planned to marry him, not after what she had seen, what she had endured. Tonight wasn't about love. It was about ending the illusion. Daniel owned the room from the moment he stepped on stage. He raised a glass, his charm polished to perfection. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Tonight is more than a celebration of love. It's proof that the Hawthorns are building not just a legacy, but a future filled with humility, strength, and honor." The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. He turned toward Emily, who stood by his side in a pale silver gown. "And here," he said proudly, pulling her close, "is the woman who made it possible. My Cinderella, the black girl who came from nothing and taught me the value of love over privilege." The crowd sighed, enchanted. Emily smiled, but her smile wasn't for him. The investors arrived next, carrying the thick folders that represented the $950 million deal everyone whispered about. This deal would save the Hawthorne empire, securing their influence for decades. Daniel puffed his chest, beaming at the cameras. "Tonight, we will finalize history," he declared. He turned to Emily, pressing a pen into her hand. "Sign gracefully," he muttered under his breath. "This is what you're here for." Emily lifted the pen. Her eyes swept across the crowd. The investors, the press, Victoria and Chloe watching smugly from the head table. The very people who had mocked her, dismissed her, laughed at her. Her heartbeat was steady. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was clear and calm. "Before I sign anything," she said, her gaze holding the crowd, "there's something I need to share." The room hushed instantly. Daniel frowned, his smile twitching at the edges. "Emily," he hissed softly, "don't do this now." But Emily stepped forward, her words carrying through the silence. "My name is not Emily Carter," she said. She let the pause hang, tension pulling tight across the hall. "It's Emily Carter Wyndham." Heiress of the Wyndham conglomerate. Gasps echoed. Cameras clicked furiously. Guests turned to one another in disbelief. Daniel froze, his face draining of color. "What? What the fuck are you talking about?" Emily met his stunned eyes, her smile faint but cutting. "You never married a poor girl. You never rescued a nobody from the ghetto. You were never the prince in this story, Daniel. You were the project, mine." The room erupted. Shocked whispers, shouted questions, flashes of light. Victoria shot to her feet, her voice sharp. "This is madness," but the investors stepped forward, nodding with respect. "She speaks the truth. She is the sole signatory on this contract." Emily lowered the pen onto the table, leaving the contract untouched. Her voice didn't tremble. Not once. "I don't sign contracts with men who mistake cruelty for class or racism for power. This deal is canceled." Gasps tore through the room. Reporters scrambled, shouting questions. Investors stormed out, their faces dark with anger. Daniel staggered toward her, his mask crumbling, his voice a roar. "You can't do this. You need me. You're nothing without me." Emily stepped back, her chin high. "No, Daniel. You're nothing without me." The ballroom dissolved into chaos. Phones buzzing, guests whispering, cameras snapping. The story of the century was already racing out into the world. The white billionaire heir, humiliated by the black bride he mocked, his empire crumbling at her word. And Emily stood in the center of it all, calm and radiant, no longer silent, no longer broken. This was her moment, and she had taken it. Chaos shook the ballroom like a storm. The Hawthorne's investors rushed toward the doors, muttering curses. Reporters shouted questions over the roar of voices, their cameras flashing like lightning. Emily stood steady at the center of it all, calm, radiant, untouchable. Victoria gripped the edge of the table, her face pale. "Emily, you don't understand," she hissed, her voice trembling. "This contract isn't just business, it's survival. Without this deal, the Hawthorne name collapses. Everything we've built is gone." Emily's voice was calm, deliberate. "I understand perfectly, and that's why I'm saying no." The investors didn't hesitate. "The Wyndham contract is the only deal that could rescue your company. Without Emily's signature, the Hawthornes are finished." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The cameras captured every word. Daniel's mask cracked. He stepped forward, his voice sharp with arrogance. "Don't listen to her. She's bluffing. She wouldn't dare throw this away." Emily's eyes locked on him, her voice cutting through his bluster. "I already have." The words struck harder than any slap. Daniel's arrogance faltered. His hands trembled. He looked from the investors storming out to the reporters flashing their cameras, then back at Emily. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "No, you wouldn't do this to me, to us." Emily tilted her head slightly. "There was never an us, Daniel." The color drained from his face. His voice broke, desperation bleeding into every syllable. "Emily, please, don't do this." He stepped closer, lowering his tone, trying to soften it. "We can fix this. I'll change. I'll treat you better. Just sign it. Please." Emily didn't move. "You've had chance after chance to change." Daniel reached for her hand, his voice shaking. "I was stupid. I didn't see what I had, but I see it now. You're everything. You're the love of my life. Please, Emily, don't ruin us." Her heart twisted for a moment. Once those words would have melted her, would have restored her hope. But now they were empty, desperate echoes. She could see it in his eyes. This wasn't love. This was survival. "You're not begging for me," she said quietly. "You're begging for your empire." Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. He knew she was right. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the once proud heir collapsed into a desperate man, pleading at the feet of the woman he had mocked. "Emily, I need you," Daniel whispered hoarsely. His knees almost buckled as he clutched her wrist. "Please don't let them take everything from me." Emily gently pulled her hand free, her chin high. "You already took everything from me, Daniel. My trust, my love, my dignity. Now I'm simply returning the favor." Gasps rippled again. Victoria covered her mouth, her hands trembling. Chloe stared at her brother in horror, unable to believe what she was seeing. Daniel Hawthorne, the man who had always controlled every room, reduced to begging in front of the entire world. Emily set the untouched pen on the table, her voice carrying above the whispers. "I don't sign contracts with men who mistake cruelty for love and arrogance for power. This deal is canceled." Her words fell like a gavel. The ballroom erupted. Investors stormed out, vowing never to return. Phones buzzed as news outlets raced to break the story. Cameras flashed, catching every angle of Daniel's fall. He dropped into his chair, face pale, staring at the unsigned contract like it was his death sentence. Because it was. Within hours, headlines exploded. Hawthorne heir humiliated. Heiress cancels $950 deal. Cinderella story exposed as racist lie. Emily Carter Wyndham, the bride who broke a billionaire. By morning, the Hawthorne name had collapsed. Stocks nosedived. Investors fled. Debt collectors circled. The empire Victoria had guarded so fiercely was gone. And Daniel, his arrogance, his cruelty, his staged love story, was reduced to a global scandal. Emily walked out of the ballroom with grace, her gown trailing behind her, her face serene. She had suffered. She had endured. She had loved deeply. But now she was free. At the doorway she paused. Her voice was soft but firm, almost to herself. Respect costs nothing. Without it, even empires fall. And with that she left, her head high, leaving the Hawthornes to crumble in the ruins of their own arrogance.